Johnny Carson was more than just a talk show host. He was a cultural icon who made millions of people laugh for 3 decades as the host of The Tonight Show. But while the world adored his humor, timing, and charm, few people ever got a glimpse into the real man behind the curtain. Carson was famous for keeping his personal life private, even from his closest friends. After his death in January 2005, whispers began to spread that his California estate held more than just memories, that locked away somewhere were boxes and rooms filled with things no one had ever seen. When his estate executors finally opened every door of his Malibu mansion, they expected to find awards, old photos, and collectibles. Instead, what they discovered inside his private garage left even his closest friends stunned. The space was like a secret museum, untouched for years, holding not just his beloved cars but also deeply personal letters and papers that revealed the true heart of Johnny Carson. What was once a room of machines became a window into the soul of a man who had spent his whole life making others laugh while quietly hiding his own pain. On January 23, 2005, Johnny Carson passed away at the age of 79 from complications of emphysema. The news hit the entertainment world like a thunderclap. For decades, Carson had been the comforting voice that America turned to at the end of the day. He had retired quietly in 1992, rarely appearing in public after that, but his presence still lingered in reruns and memories. In his final years, he lived a calm and private life by the ocean with his fourth wife, Alexis Moss. Friends described him as witty and sharp as ever, but noticeably frail. Even as his health declined, he refused to draw attention to himself. When the world learned of his death, tributes flooded every major network. Fellow entertainers mourned the loss of a man who had changed late-night television forever. Yet, as people remembered the laughter he brought, rumors began to grow that the king of late night had left behind secrets hidden within his home. Many who knew Carson believed that even after death, he was not done surprising the world. Carson's Malibu home was one of the most breathtaking properties in California. Built on the cliffs of Point Dume, it stretched across 4 acres of oceanfront land, complete with lush gardens, koi ponds, fruit orchards, and sweeping views of the Pacific Ocean. Designed by architect Ed Niles, the 7,100-square-foot mansion was built mostly of glass and wood, blurring the line between indoors and outdoors. It had a saltwater pool, a tennis court, terraces for entertaining guests, and rooms filled with decades of memories. Yet for all its openness, Carson's home remained a fortress of privacy. Few people were ever invited inside. After his death, the team responsible for cataloging his estate began a long and careful process of going through his belongings. They found boxes labeled miscellaneous, locked cabinets with missing keys, and rooms that had not been entered in years. It was during this process that the garage began to draw particular attention. To the estate handlers, it was just another part of the property. But once they lifted the heavy metal door, they realized they had stepped into something extraordinary. A time capsule of Johnny Carson's hidden life. The moment the garage door lifted, a beam of light fell across rows of cars covered in dust and perfection. The smell of leather and old oil filled the air. This wasn't just a car collection. It was a glimpse into Carson's past. Each vehicle told a story, some of fame, some of family, and some of deep emotion. At the far end of the room stood a 1939 Chrysler Royal, the car that once belonged to his father. It was the same car in which Johnny learned to drive. Time had faded its paint, but the sentimental value was timeless. Nearby was a silver 1981 DeLorean DMC-12, the futuristic car made famous by Back to the Future. Carson wasn't just an admirer. He had been one of the early investors in the company, putting $500,000 into its creation. Ironically, one day he got trapped inside the DeLorean when its doors malfunctioned, and he later turned the story into one of his most beloved jokes. Beside it was a 1988 white Mercedes-Benz 560C, elegant and understated. A car that reflected Carson's preference for quiet sophistication. Then there was his final ride, a 1992 Chevrolet Corvette, sleek and powerful, marking the later years of his life. Tucked at the back was a rare 1966 Ghia 450 SS, a car with Italian curves and Hollywood charm. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became that Carson's garage was not just a display of luxury. It was a diary written in chrome and steel. But the most shocking discoveries weren't the cars. As the estate handlers dug deeper, they found small boxes and folders tucked behind tool racks and car covers. One dusty envelope caught their attention. The handwriting on it was unmistakable, Johnny's. Inside were letters he had written but never sent. Some were addressed to his sons, others to people no one recognized. The most heartbreaking one appeared to be written to his middle son, Rick, who had died in a car accident in 1991. The letter spoke of regret, love, and the pain of missed chances. Carson wrote about wishing he had been a better father, of hoping his son knew how much he was loved. For years, fans had seen Carson as the confident host who always had a perfect comeback. But these private letters revealed a side of him that few could have imagined. A man haunted by loss and guilt. It was as if, within the walls of his garage, he had left behind the emotions he could never share with the world. These discoveries showed that Johnny Carson wasn't just the king of late night. He was also a man who wrestled with his own humanity. Behind the camera, Johnny Carson's life was far from perfect. He married 4 times, and each marriage carried its own storms. His first marriage to Jody Wolcott gave him 3 sons, but fame and long absences tore them apart. His second marriage to Joanne Copeland ended in bitterness, partly fueled by his drinking. His third wife, Joanna Holland, shocked him by filing for divorce on their anniversary night, without warning. His final marriage to Alexis Moss brought stability and peace in his last years, but it came after decades of emotional battles. Those close to him said Carson could be 2 very different men. Charming and funny one moment, cold and distant the next. Alcohol often fueled his darker moods. In 1982, he was even arrested for drunk driving, a scandal that briefly broke his carefully controlled image. Carson also had famous feuds, with singer Wayne Newton, who accused him of cruel jokes, and with comedian Joan Rivers, whom he never spoke to again after she launched her own talk show. These moments painted a picture of a man who guarded his emotions fiercely, often choosing silence over confrontation. For a man who spent his life talking to millions, Johnny Carson's greatest power, and his greatest weakness, was his ability to say nothing at all. Johnny Carson's journey from a shy Midwestern boy to one of the most beloved television hosts in history is the stuff of legend. Born in Corning, Iowa in 1925, he discovered his love for entertaining at an early age by performing magic tricks. After serving in the Navy during World War II, he started his career in radio and then transitioned to television, where his calm voice, quick wit, and perfect timing set him apart. In 1962, he took over The Tonight Show, and television would never be the same. For 30 years, Carson was the face of late-night entertainment. His interviews, sketches, and monologues became nightly rituals for millions of Americans. He won 6 Emmy Awards, a Peabody, and even the Presidential Medal of Freedom. When he retired in 1992, more than 50 million people watched his farewell episode, a number that showed how deeply he was loved. He had set the gold standard for talk show hosts, influencing everyone from David Letterman and Jay Leno to Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Fallon. Yet for all his success, Carson never seemed completely comfortable with fame. Away from the lights, he preferred quiet moments by the sea, tinkering with his cars or writing in his notebooks. The same notebooks later found in his garage, filled with thoughts on fame, loneliness, and the cost of laughter. The things found in Johnny Carson's garage did more than surprise his estate handlers. They reshaped how people remembered him. The cars showed his passion, the letters revealed his pain, and the notes uncovered his reflections on life. Together they painted a portrait of a man who was both a legend and a mystery. To the public, he was the smooth, smiling host who made every guest feel special. But in private, he was a man who struggled with love, loss, and the loneliness that often comes with greatness. His garage became a symbol of that dual life, a place where the performer and the person finally met. Even in death, Johnny Carson managed to captivate the world one last time. The discovery reminded fans that the people who make us laugh the most often hide the deepest sadness. Yet despite his flaws, Carson's legacy remains untouchable. He changed television forever, setting a standard that no one has fully matched. His influence continues in every late-night host who follows in his footsteps. And maybe that's the greatest secret of all. That behind every laugh he gave us, there was a man quietly searching for his own peace. While much of Johnny Carson's private life was kept behind closed doors, one aspect that slowly came to light after his death was his quiet generosity. Carson was never one to make a show of his donations. Unlike many celebrities who sought headlines for their charitable acts, Carson gave quietly, sometimes anonymously. After his passing, court documents revealed that he had donated hundreds of millions of dollars to causes that mattered to him, from education to healthcare to the arts. One of the most remarkable discoveries was the John W. Carson Foundation, a trust he had established years before his death. Through it, he contributed to hospitals, children's welfare programs, and universities across the United States. The foundation still operates today, continuing to help people long after Carson's passing. What truly shocked many was the scale of his generosity. The foundation had quietly distributed more than $150 million to charitable organizations, without ever attaching his name to the headlines. To Carson, giving was something deeply personal, an act of kindness that didn't need applause. In fact, it matched the same personality traits seen in his garage collection: deliberate, private, and filled with meaning known only to him. Among the papers found in his home were handwritten notes about the causes he wanted to support: scholarships for students in broadcasting, help for struggling families, and even grants for Native American communities. These writings painted a picture of a man who, despite living a life of fame and wealth, never forgot his humble beginnings in small-town Iowa. His generosity became one of the final, unexpected revelations about who Johnny Carson truly was. A man who helped countless lives quietly, without ever demanding the spotlight. Johnny Carson's influence on American humor is impossible to overstate. His comedic timing, ability to improvise, and natural charm shaped how the entire world thought of late-night television. Before Carson, talk shows were simple. Hosts asked questions, guests answered. But when he took over The Tonight Show in 1962, he transformed it into something far greater: a nightly ritual of laughter, conversation, and connection. Every evening, millions tuned in to see his monologue, a blend of sharp wit, political jokes, and playful commentary on daily life. He made America laugh at itself, and he did it with warmth. Unlike today's hosts, who often push boundaries or lean on controversy, Carson understood the subtle art of humor that united rather than divided. His laughter wasn't just about jokes, it was about timing, tone, and empathy. He knew when to tease a guest, when to stay silent, and when to let a moment breathe. Some of his best moments weren't scripted at all. Like when animal trainer Jim Fowler brought a monkey on stage that suddenly leaped onto Carson's head, or when a guest's story went hilariously off the rails and Carson simply leaned back, letting the laughter flow. These moments of genuine connection were what made him loved by everyone, from celebrities to ordinary people at home. And yet, when those who worked with him looked back, they said the same thing. Once the cameras stopped rolling, Johnny became quiet again. It was as if the laughter he gave to the world came at the cost of his own silence. That contrast between his public and private self only made his posthumous discoveries, his letters, his memories, and his hidden treasures all the more meaningful. For many who admired Johnny Carson, it was difficult to separate the man from the myth. To them, he was a flawless entertainer, confident, witty, and endlessly charming. But those who worked closest to him knew a different version of Johnny. Ed McMahon, his longtime sidekick and announcer, once said that Carson was the most unpredictable man I ever met. Warm one moment, distant the next. He demanded perfection, both from himself and from those around him. Writers often joked that if a joke didn't land during rehearsal, Carson wouldn't just cut it. He'd dissect it until he found exactly why it didn't work. He was deeply analytical, always searching for the perfect rhythm of comedy. Yet despite his drive for excellence, he was fair and respectful. He gave opportunities to countless young comedians who went on to become legends. David Letterman, Ellen DeGeneres, Jay Leno, Jerry Seinfeld, and Robin Williams all credited Carson for their big break. For a comedian, being invited to The Tonight Show wasn't just an appearance. It was a rite of passage. If Johnny called you over to the couch after your set, your career could change overnight. Still, there were moments when Carson's perfectionism turned inward, leading to self-doubt. He once admitted in a rare interview, "I can make people laugh every night, but I can't always make myself laugh." This quiet vulnerability, hidden beneath the confident host persona, became one of the most human parts of his story. It made sense that his garage, his personal sanctuary, contained not only his prized possessions, but also the emotional echoes of a man who had carried both laughter and loneliness in equal measure. Carson's love for automobiles was more than just a hobby. It was a reflection of his life's journey. Each car in his garage represented a different era, both in his career and personal growth. The 1939 Chrysler Royal reminded him of his roots, a reminder of simpler days in Nebraska when he was just a boy dreaming about fame. The DeLorean, a car both futuristic and flawed, mirrored his own risks and ambitions during his peak years in television. The 1966 Ghia 450 SS, a rare car with only 57 ever made, symbolized his exclusivity, unique, polished, and hard to truly know. Even the arrangement of his garage seemed to tell a story. The oldest cars were near the front, as if greeting him each time he entered, a quiet nod to his beginnings. The newer ones were parked deeper inside, representing the later, more complex years of his life. Each vehicle had been carefully maintained, their engines preserved with care even in his final years. But it wasn't just about wealth or luxury. For Carson, cars were a form of escape.